This is Abraham Rader, atmospheric technician, admiring the handiwork of another atmospheric technician when I receive word from the CE that a new plasma room should be built. Another engineering department employee informs us that medbay already has another plasma room set up and we just need to fill it with plasma. I enter medbay maintenance to look for the plasma room, but all I find is some graffiti at first. I then find the plasma room, but the doors are locked. No matter, nothing a trip to the head of personnel office can't fix. I wait for the mime to finish up, and then I step up to the plate. Tell him I need access to the plasma room, and after some finagling, we figure out that medbay access is most appropriate for me. A medbay plasma man shows up, and I say, hey, what's up? And give him a heads up that I'm going to fill up his plasma room for him. All we got to do to get the plasma room filled up is we need to fill up a canister and then take it over to the plasma room and hook it up to the connector there. We turn on the filter from the plasma supply, and then we hook it through the yellow line to the gray line by turning on the pressure pumps to the maximum output of 4,500 kilopascals. I have a tier 1 canister set up, but I decide that the capacity of a tier 1 canister is inadequate, so I retrieve some plasteel and begin assembling a tier 2 canister, which has a much greater capacity. The canisters require a volumetric pump to fill up to full capacity, so I replace the pressure pump with a volumetric pump. I relabel the canisters as plasma for safety purposes. And off I go, hauling my precious cargo. I hook up the plasma tank to the connector. I reconfigure the air alarm to begin sucking out the oxygen and nitrogen from the room, because that's a bad mix for plasma men. Soon the vent's spitting out plasma. The airlock for this plasma room is lacking in some safety features, but I try to configure it as safely as I can. Plasma's thin and pretty cold. I continue fiddling to try to fix this issue. Just then the medbay plasma man shows up to check the place out. He seems impressed, a natural reaction, but then he decides to see if he can withstand low temperature plasma. That doesn't go too well. Puts himself out, but things go from bad to worse when he walks out without hooking his plasma supply back up. I try to help him out, but he soon chokes himself out worse than David Carradine did. Desperately seek help from the paramedic, but he's ignoring me in favor of another patient. Possible plasma man racism. Now we got these red balls out here, and red balls ain't no good. Looks like there's all kinds of problems in that graffiti room. Luckily, I know just the thing to exterminate them. It starts with a P. Unfortunately, my attempt to clear out a path results in a fire starting in the maintenance hall. I fight it just enough to get it under a minimal amount of control. A couple of security personnel are snooping around and they see the fire as well. I have no time but for the most perfunctory of explanations, which is I'm going to go kill them. And by them I mean the cultists. I carry my payload through the maintenance hallway, seeking out the cultist base. I break past the barrier and let loose with fiery death, like an incontinent gonorrhea patient. The artificer puts up a good fight, but the actual solution to the riddle of steel is not flesh or steel, it's fire, and it soon conquers all. I myself am not immune to the dangers of fire, and with some help from the artificer, despite me putting in a couple of hits, he takes me down onto a table, and I soon perish. But I fought the good fight, right? Perhaps I shall be rewarded in the afterlife. As you can see, plasma is a very effective culticide agent. In fact, it's perhaps a little bit too effective. It starts leaking out of the med bay a little bit. Medical staff start fighting the fire. Lawyer is conscripted into the fight, and he does a pretty good job. It's pretty safe to say that these cultists are exactly where they belong. In hell. Some kind of robot butler is helping out too. He's well, I guess he's opening a door. But then the artificer starts busting down the door too, trying to leak all the fire out into medbay as a revenge. Soon the lawyer's on fire. The artificer starts breaking down the protective resin foam and then runs straight into the lawyer again. The artificer beats the crap out of the lawyer a couple times and then drags it into the fire to get burnt up. The lawyer doesn't like that. So the lawyer finishes off the artificer and then tries to run out of the maintenance hallway, but ends up collapsing outside. Almost dead. The plasma man atmospheric technician is doing a good job of suppressing the fire. Soon the flames start flashing, doing an impression of the game of life. It's pretty strange, almost surreal. Body recovery starts taking place. Some of them are burnt to husks. Quite a difficult task for reviving those. A request is made for a positronic brain, and I dive into this cube of a brain. The roboticist tells me he's going to put me into a mech. He also gives me a little bit of small talk. I guess I'm supposed to not have a memory of my previous life. Takes him a little while to get it finished up for me, but then he loads me into an Odysseus healing mech, one of the primary features of which is a healing beam. It takes me a little while to figure out how to use it. And just then, as I'm about to work on healing those that I burnt previously, an ominous sound occurs. Turns out in my haste to destroy the cultists before they destroy us, I violated one of the server rules. I'm not supposed to be hunting them down yet, not until they get the pentagram halos above their heads. Because I'm not security. I get hung up in my conversation with the administrator, in particular the semantics over the term valid hunting, because initially I felt like I wasn't really hunting for them at all, but I suppose I was still in the wrong, and in the end I agreed as much. In the end I'm left off with a warning, and a second note is attached to my profile with the server. There's some kind of critically ill patient who requires constant healing who needs to be led onto the evac shuttle. An evac shuttle that was called partially because of the fire that I started. I agreed to let him into my stasis bed interior, and I let him into the evac shuttle for safekeeping, doing my part as a healing mech. Turns out my patient's a bit of a wino though, because he wants booze. That I cannot provide him. He'll just have to abide. And that's about it for this shift.